Episode 10 of the WildFed podcast, Wrangling Iguanas and Diving for Abalone with Jim Knutson, is brought to you by Surthrival. Surthrival's new line of nutraceutically advanced, organically produced CBD products are selling like crazy, and that's because they work. The formula is called CBD3 because it's made from 3 CBD extracts combined into one. First, a powerful, scientifically validated nano-delivered CBD that's designed to get into your cells fast. Then a thoroughly researched and scientifically studied liposomally delivered CBD that stays in the body substantially longer than other formulas. And third is a traditionally made broad-spectrum hemp extract with all the benefits of the cannabis plant minus the THC. CBD3 is studied, lab-tested for purity, and delivers faster results that last longer. Surthrival is so much more than just CBD, so go to surthrival.com to see the entire lineup. Surthrival is empowerment fuel. Hey, did you know that I publish stories and photos from my most recent wild food adventures in The Subsistence, WildFed's bi-weekly newsletter? I also share links to other shows, magazines, or podcasts where I've been interviewed, bonus video material from the WildFed TV show, and a lot more. Head over to wild-fed.com to join The Subsistence. Twice a month, our subscribers get content that we don't publish anywhere else. Lastly, we're just 1 week away from the release of episode 1 of WildFed, our online TV show. For those of you who've pre-ordered the show, starting Monday the 6th of 2020, you'll have access to a new episode each week for the next 8 weeks. Also, for those of you who've joined our 9-week interactive program, the WildFed Season 1 experience will begin on Monday, January 6th as well. There's still a week left to join the program or pre-order the show, so head over to wild-fed.com to sign up. I'm Daniel Vitalis, and you're listening to the WildFed Podcast, a show about reconnecting with nature through hunting, fishing, foraging, and food. WildFed. Food is all around you. Today's episode is with my good friend Jim Knutson. He's a lifelong hunter and fisherman anchored in the Florida Keys. He's the owner and operator of Real Identity Fishing Charters and takes guests out on trips to fish the reefs, wrecks, and offshore waters of southern Florida for its abundant and diverse seasonal fish species. Though he's been hunting most of his life, Jim's story is a bit unusual. He didn't come to this lifestyle through the traditional pathway, and you'll hear all about that in this interview. Jim's also the person who got me started hunting iguanas in the Florida Keys and has been the captain I rely on when I want to fish the Caribbean waters around southern Florida's archipelago. He's got a unique and diverse background as a modern hunter-gatherer, and I think his story will inspire you to turn over rocks you might otherwise stroll on past. You'll meet Jim in episode 4 of the WildFed TV show, where we visit him to hunt iguanas and forage young coconuts. I'll be in Florida again this winter to fish and dive with him, and I recommend if you're in the Keys and want to go home with some fresh fish for your freezer, that you look him up. He might even be able to point you towards some iguanas. Hey everybody, this is the WildFed Podcast. We're coming at you from southern Florida. I got a couple people here to introduce you to. I'm here with, of course, my exclusive executive producer, Grant. Go ahead and introduce yourself.
How's it going, everybody?
And here with a good friend and our host, Jim. Jim, go ahead and say hi and tell us who you are.
Yeah, I'm Jim Knutson. I've lived down here in Marathon Key, right on the water. Beautiful place. Do a lot of hunting, fishing, and gathering.
Yep, boat captain.
Also a boat captain. I have a charter business I run down here, and just love being in the outdoors and being on the water and just enjoying life.
And you're originally from California, right? You've been
here
a little bit, but where are you from originally?
Originally between Sacramento and Lake Tahoe, up in the Sierra Nevada foothills, a little town called Hangtown.
Gorgeous up there, huh?
Yeah, it's great.
Beautiful country. Yeah, thinking back, I mean, because there's a mix of, it's forested, but then you also have some of that exposed craggy rock and, small mountains up there too, right? That sort of, you have all that exposed. Is it granite up there?
Yeah, we're in the foothills, so it's kind of an interesting place because it's, seasonal, kind of right at the snow line.
Yeah.
A lot of streams, a lot of lakes, a lot of diversity in the environment around you. You've got, mountains, or you've got flatlands, you've got farm fields, you've got delta, you've got high Sierra lakes. Pretty much any kind of environment you want to put yourself in, you could be within, in about 2 hours.
Yeah. As opposed to here, which is such a very specific climate, right? What brought you down to this part of the country, and how did you end up with essentially a saltwater aquarium in your backyard?
Yeah. It's
And it is like that. I mean, every time I go into your backyard, I look over into the canal, and yesterday it was giant tarpon swimming through here. We saw stingrays in there. I've seen lobsters down in there and some crabs down in there. And then, of course, everything from, all kinds of different, well, yeah, I mean, you've got a snowy egret that hangs out in your backyard every day.
If I leave the door open, he just comes in the house and helps himself.
It's pretty freaky. But anyway, how'd you end up down here?
I had an opportunity with the work I was doing to live anywhere I wanted on the East Coast, and luckily enough, I had family that lived here in Marathon.
Oh, okay, so you had to pick on the East Coast somewhere.
Yeah,
that makes sense.
And I'm like, I know just the place.
Yeah. Well, we first met. I came down here with my business partner and came down to do a little fishing, and it was we were going to do some fishing from the shore. Intended to rent some equipment, and then also we're going to go out on our charter boat. And as I recall, we got down here and it was so windy you couldn't even cast a shrimp from the shore. I mean, just get blown right back at you. And our charter was canceled, and ended up over at Chris's shop, the Tackle Box. So give them a little plug. They're right here on Route 1 in Marathon, and stopped in there. And it was that morning. From the place that we were staying, we had an Airbnb, and I went outside. The wind was whipping on the beach. But I noticed the little iguana up in the tree, and I said, oh my God, they have iguanas here. I didn't realize. And thought to myself, man, there must be somebody hunting them. What's going on there? So we went into the tackle box, and I said to Chris, the owner, hey, do you know anybody who hunts iguanas? And he said, you need to talk to this guy. And I look over, and there's Jim. And we got to chatting, and you were just so hospitable, and offered to take me out for the day, and brought me out, showed me your technique, showed me the tool that you use for it, your snare, loaned it to me, and I actually went out and was able to get some iguanas, and we've been fast friends ever since. So tell us a little bit I'd love to talk a little bit about that, but first maybe a little of your background, hunting, fishing, foraging, and all that kind of stuff, because you've been and you're not your typical, I wouldn't put you in the category of your typical sportsman. You're an atypical sportsman. So,
very true.
And that's what I think that's why we hit it off. I mean, most people who hunt aren't going to be interested in iguanas. That's not going to really cross the radar for them. Tell us kind of how you started, because as a kid, you got going with it, right?
Yeah. Well, we grew up and, we didn't have, I can't even say we didn't have a lot of money. Sometimes we didn't have really anything to show for it. So, had to rely on, other means to feed yourself if you didn't want to have hamburgers, 7 nights a week. So I started, just as a kid finding out, okay, well, there's crawfish over here. So then there's a food source. The squirrels are around. They're always a food source, and started learning how to kind of hunt and fish and stuff.
Did you have any mentors, or were you just sort of figuring it out?
I had a number of mentors, which is really cool because my mom had a number of friends that were either into hunting or into fishing, and I could go hang out with, different people that I knew, and, been friends with my mom since they were like in high school, and they're like, here, take Jimmy, show him how to go do X, Y, or Z. And I remember once she took me out with her. I went out with her friend Mickey Baxter, and he really got me into hunting. But I was about 12, 13 years old at the time, and really more into fishing at the time, and kind of tuned into that. And so we set up camp at this high Sierra location, very remote. There's a little tiny stream that runs through this meadow, and he's off bow hunting, and I'm just 12 years old. What am I going to do? So first thing I do is shed my shoes and jump in the creek, and notice there's trout there. And I also noticed they all running up underneath this cut bank. And so I started thinking, what is the difference of me just running my hand under there, grabbing one of them and throw them on the bank, and whether, they distinguish a hand from a fish. It was really just more of a curiosity thing. And sure enough, it just worked out. And I had 4 or 5 fish up on the bank by the time.
So you taught yourself to tickle trout without having anybody show you that?
Yeah.
No kidding.
Yeah.
I've never done it.
It's not that hard.
That's amazing to me.
Kind of make a mess of the things, and then when you're putting your hands over the banks, there's a lot more underneath there than just trout. Sometimes there's water snakes or,
right.
turtles.
That's funny.
Tickle trout just means getting them with your hand?
Yeah, that's what they call it, right?
It is, but really you could touch them while you're in there. And as long as you're not being aggressive, you put your hand on them and almost like pet them.
Wow.
And they don't really know it's you because the water's so muddy and stirred up. They don't have sense of sight.
Right.
It could be another trout. It could be a turtle rubbing on. They don't know. They're not going to freak out over every little thing that touches them,
Yeah, it's like we were just watching that video you played. You had had some GoPro footage of some tarpon underwater, and I saw one of those duck, I don't know, some kind of waterfowl.
Yeah.
Their feet paddling across the surface, banging into some of those tarpon, and it was like the tarpon didn't really even respond to that.
Yeah, I'd be more concerned if I was that duck.
Yeah. It's true, actually. We were watching them. What was it we were throwing in there yesterday? Oh, it was that stingray that we cut, and throwing, big pieces of skin or of wings into the canal and seeing those tarpon come up and gulp them. It looks like they could take a bird like that.
Oh, I bet they could.
If they wanted to, anyway. Well, so you started off doing that. I know you've got a story I'd love for you to share if I think we're sufficiently past the statute of limitations.
Most likely.
I can edit it later if you want me to. But you told me about the first deer you tried to take.
Yeah, that was not a successful thing, but it was learned a lot of stuff. So we had deer, and I had no gun. I was 12 years old. Just pretty much, my mom had a bunch of property that we were crawling around on all the time, and I knew where they were going to be and so forth. So I found some hay, and I put it underneath this tree, and I devised that I would just wait in this tree for the deer to show up. And I don't know if you remember those Rambo knives with the little fishing kit inside.
The hollow handle.
The hollow handle, compass
bottom.
on top. Exactly. So my plan was, that's a long blade. And so
They drew first blood.
No, my plan was get up in this tree where they're not going to see me, hold still, wait till he lines up right, jump out of the tree, stab him with the knife, and then all
Land in the hay.
No, he was eating the hay.
The hay was the attractant.
I figured he was going to be soft enough to land on, and everything would work fine.
It'd break your fall.
I might have weighed 95 pounds total, so the Rambo wife probably weighed more than I did.
Yeah, definitely added to the overall impact.
It did, but plan was going along accordingly. The deer was there. He was munching along. He was probably there for 45 minutes before he finally lined up just right for me to take my feet off these two branches I was straddling. And then, like I said, the plan was fall out of the tree, stab the deer. Success. So everything's lined up just right. Take a breath, get my grip, slip off those branches, just right, him flying through the air, and you accelerate very fast.
How high up are you?
I was only about 20 feet up, but that's
pretty high, though.
That's very significant.
I wouldn't fall. Falling out of a 20-foot tree stand is not a safe prospect.
It's not. Luckily, the deer was there. He was lined up, and he did break my fall.
You did actually land on the deer?
I did land on him. Much harder than I anticipated. The knife went flying. I remember his knees kind of buckled. He hit the ground. When I say he, I might be hit. Anyhow, so hit the ground. I'm laying there, half concussed. He gets up, hits me in the head, and takes off running. He's just wondering, what is that deer thinking? What the fuck
just happened? Yeah. That's the one skittish deer always looking up after that. Yeah, that's funny. So anyway, you kind of had to teach yourself along the way, obviously.
Yeah.
Walk us through a little bit. So from there, you were what age when you described that? You're 12 or so?
I was about 12. Yeah, that's when we first...
so walk us through your sort of, give us the timeline of your hunting, fishing career from kind of moving ahead a little bit up till... I'm curious to hear about some of the things you did diving for abalone. I'd like to hear a little bit about your duck hunting and all that. I know those are all things that you've been passionate about over the years.
Absolutely. So, when I was 13, I was allowed to kill deer in California. So I went through the proper training, got my hunter license through the California Hunter Education Program.
That was when you put aside hopes of jumping out of the tree. And
I'm like, this is not working. I just need to go with the flow and figure out how this is really done.
Yeah, there's like a whole system in place already.
Somebody else has already figured this out.
Right.
Let's let them show me.
Piggyback on their success.
Exactly. So, I did learn something from it, so it wasn't a complete loss. But no, so then growing up, I started doing deer hunting legitimately. And I've gotten a deer every single year until I moved here to Florida. Mm-hmm. Not a lot of deer here, but there's other things. So I'd grow up deer hunting, doing all that kind of stuff. And then I had a buddy of mine who had great property, had these awesome deer on his property. And I'm like, can I come out and shoot one? He's like, sure. And then he says, why don't you show me how to do it? I'm like, sure. So I get him into deer hunting. And then after deer season, he's like, okay, well, I spent all this money on this hunting equipment, my license, this and that. What do we go do now? I'm like, I don't know. What are you talking about? What do we do now? He goes, well, isn't there other things to hunt? I'm like, well, you can go duck hunting or something. He goes, do you know anything about it? I go, I know absolutely nothing about duck hunting.
How old are you at that point?
I was in my 30s by that time.
Okay.
And so we dove into learning how to duck hunt together, and we planned right away not to jump out of any trees.
Right. We're going to let them come down.
But, I had a friend of mine who was a duck hunter, and he wasn't hunting anymore. And he's like, hey, come on over. I got all the equipment. I got decoys. I got waders.
Yeah.
You're all set. So the first thing I found out about people that are going to loan you their equipment is, A, they're very generous, and B, it's probably not the top end stuff.
Right.
So we get out to the blind. The waders are leaking. I'm freezing. Everything I have is wet.
This is in California?
This is in California. Yeah. Central Valley. Gray Lodge was actually the very first place that I went hunting, which is a large public hunting area.
Oh, okay.
We did get ducks, though, so we were successful.
Oh, yeah, right from the beginning.
We had 2 ringnecks. They were not the best ducks in the world, but, they were mighty tasty.
Yeah.
So then I started doing a lot more duck hunting and stuff and learning how to do the calling, and got really good at the calling and the decoy setup, and got involved with California Waterfowl at that time, which is a big hunter organization-based place that specializes in, restoring habitats and getting youth into hunting and creating more opportunities. So they're well known for their wood duck program and so forth that they help do. But I started getting involved with that, and with the youth education piece. Went and got my hunter's education instructor certification in California, which was really cool, being able to give back and show kids that were my age how not to do what I did.
Right. Yeah.
Just take that Rambo knife and we'll show you how to do it right.
Yeah. Put that aside. So you did some, you taught classes, hunter safety classes is what you're talking about.
Yeah. I did that for about 10 years in California.
Oh, wow. Was that long?
Yeah. I've got a couple of awards from California Waterfowl for Volunteer of the Year.
Oh, yeah?
A couple of years in a row.
Yeah, cool.
Then some recognition from the Department of Fish and Game out there as well, or what they call themselves now. It was Department of Fish and Game. It wasn't politically correct, so they changed it to WTF.
Oh, yeah, that's way more politically correct, right?
Yeah.
WTF.
Water, trees, and fauna. No.
What the?
It's water, trees, and fauna.
Is that what it is? Water, trees, and fauna?
No.
Right.
It's like the...
Water, trees, and fauna.
It was a joke that was going around for a while.
It's really funny.
There's like Department of Wildlife Management now.
It was the game part that people didn't like?
The game part people didn't like because they feel like you're playing games with the animals.
Sure. Yeah, it's funny. I've wrestled back and forth with that word a little bit, but as soon as somebody goes and wants to like ban a word, that's when I start to be like, well, I like that word.
I like that word. You shouldn't ban
I like that word.
Don't ban any words.
Let's not be doing that. Okay, so you did that, and you were also involved in, you've told me about a program I imagine was concurrent with this when you worked with people who were opposed to hunting initially, came through the program, and you were able to, well, I'll let you speak to it, but tell us a little bit about that.
No, that was great. That was also through California Waterfowl. We were doing classes for the kids at this place called Bird Haven Ranch, which is phenomenal, privately held duck hunting land. The gentleman that owns it is Paul Bonnerson. I believe he's the president of Ducks Unlimited now. And he was generous enough to let California Waterfowl use it to do these youth education programs, where they come out, they get their hunter education certificate, they go through, hands-on with the guns, how to set up the decoys, etc. And then we take them out on a hunt with a guide. So I would teach the class and actually take them out with a hunt.
That's something they
really
pay
cool.
for? Is that something that's pro bono, or how does that work?
It's, the kids pay a nominal fee to cover costs and to make sure that, if we were doing it for free.
You want them to have some skin in the game.
You want some skin in the game. You want them to show up and you want them to be invested in it. So there's a nominal fee they charge for that, but really it's not anything that's going to keep a kid away from it. And if there is, we'll make sure that they'll work with the kid.
Yeah.
So based on the success of that, I'm not sure how it came about, but it was decided, why don't we do this for UC Davis wildlife biology students who are somewhat opposed to hunting but willing to hear the pitch and sit in a blind, whether or not they shoot a duck or not.
Okay.
I mean, we're not going to force someone to shoot a duck.
It can't be hard up at UC Davis to find people who are opposed to hunting, or at least on the fence about it, right?
No, but it's what was really cool is the students that applied, they wrote an essay and they said, here's my feelings on it. I'm going into wildlife management and I don't have a hunting license and I don't really get it, but I'm willing to hear the pitch.
And I mean, I guess for people who don't understand this yet, in wildlife management, I mean, you are deeply interwoven with the hunting community there, right? I mean,
You should be.
Right.
You should be. And people are getting away from that. They think we can just go in and manage wildlife without using all the tools of wildlife management.
We're seeing even more and more like wardens up where we are who don't hunt or have a background in hunting, and so don't necessarily understand the culture that they're part of the management of.
Exactly. And it's so critical that, people that are going to be making decisions for hunters down the road understand where we're coming from and why we do it and why we're so passionate about it, and why we spend a lot of money to do that. I mean, the hunter education program is paid for with Pittman Robinson funds, which, if you don't know, is the 11% tax that sportsmen decided to put on themselves in, I think, 1937. I'm not positive, but so any gun or ammunition or hunting equipment that is sold today.
And that's any gun, as I understand it, too. That includes
the ARs
handguns that aren't even part of the hunting world.
Exactly. Handguns,
11% of that money going. We were just sitting down with Fish and Wildlife in Maine and talking to the specialist for migratory and upland game birds. And he said, I believe, 75% of their funding is Pittman Robinson, and the rest being, hunting licenses and sale of specialty stamps and things like that. But 75%, I feel like there should be a national conversation going on about, because you never hear woven through the conversation about we need to ban guns, we need to create more regulation. We never hear about what will happen to deer, moose, bear, elk, ducks. How will we fund all of that management? I mean, I don't think people understand that they're looking to dry up that funding as a side effect of their political stance. So, but anyway, back to it. So you were saying, you were mentioning that in relationship to people who are going into wildlife management, maybe who aren't familiar with the hunting world very much.
Exactly. So we put them through the hunter education curriculum, which is exactly the same for everybody that goes through it. Then we put them in we show them some hands-on skills, like I didn't have, like, how do you put on waders? Where do you put your decoys? Try to make some noises with the duck call that aren't going to repel the birds.
Right.
Just a few things like that, just some basic skills.
Those are really important too, because, as somebody who came into hunting as an adult, and when I say adult, I don't mean like 18, like I came into it in my mid 30s.
Yep.
People take for granted, like, how to put your waders on, things like that actually it can be really helpful to have somebody show you that, and the mistakes that you can be saved. I mean, I just feel like that's something that is going to become more and more important as well, because if you are an adult who wants to go hunting, there aren't many courses. Like, I remember at one point I was like, I want to learn how to drive my car offensively. I want to learn how to crash through barricades, and, I want to go 140 miles an hour around the track, and I want to learn how to do all that. I want to learn how to shoot out of my car, all that stuff. There's courses you can go and learn how to do that. But if you're like, I want to go deer hunting, I'm just going to look for a course on that. Outside of hunter safety, there's not really a lot out there, surprisingly, because there's a market for it.
No, and it's such a small segment of the population now. I know in California, it's less than 1% of the population hunts, like significantly less than 1%. Mm-hmm. The fastest new segment of hunters coming in are women, which I think is great. Mm-hmm. but the old, grandpa and his dad and his grandson stuff.
The hereditary sort of passing along.
Yeah, and my dad, he didn't really hunt. It's not his thing, which is cool. I get it. Not that he's opposed to it. He's always there. Hey, did you get a deer? Bring me some venison, kind of guy.
Right.
He's like, I don't want to do the work. But yeah, so getting these kids involved is just important, and having some direction of where do you start. I didn't start duck hunting until I was like in my late 30s, mid 30s or so, I think, and I had to start all over. It's a whole new thing. How does a reservation system work? Where do I go to hunt? What can I do?
Yep. Access is a huge thing that, again, you just take for granted if you grew up in it, and you understand at least the basics of the rules if you grew up in it. You understand the basics of how to find places, how to get permission. Those are things that you learn by being immersed in the culture when you're young, and as an adult, I imagine it made you a very effective teacher as far as passing it on to other adults, having had learned it.
It did. It's like, I don't know if you've hunted refuges before, but there's a whole system. It's like a whole different world that you don't know exists until you get exposed to it. You've got a reservation system, which you apply for. And then you've got a lottery system that you can show up and apply for a lottery. And then you've got a sweat line. And all these things, I did not know what they mean.
Right. I don't know what they mean.
The sweat line is basically 200 people for reservations accepted the reservation. Whether or not they're going to show up or not, who knows? Because not everybody shows up. You got different things happening. So you form a line, and you're literally in there sweating, hoping you're going to get on.
First come, first serve type of deal when
kind
it
of
starts
first come,
to let
first
people
serve.
in. So it's like going to a restaurant that's mostly booked with reservations.
Pretty much.
You're looking for an open seat.
Yeah. But you want to be there at shoot time. You don't want to be
right,
there.
right, of course. Yeah.
Later on. So yeah, it's just a whole new world. It was great to get involved in it and kind of get, I had the deer hunting down pat, I had the turkey hunting down pat, quail no problem, all the small game not a problem, but getting into ducks, and there's a lot of formalities and legal requirements. You have to have duck stamps, and by the way, if you buy a duck stamp, buy two.
Let's talk about that for a second. You go into your post office, you say, I want to buy a duck stamp. The last ones that I bought were, I think, $25.
Yep.
You need that as that's the federal portion. So you have your state license to hunt ducks, but because ducks are highly migratory, they're regulated also federally because they move from state to state. When you buy a $25 duck stamp, that money goes into
conservation
habitat.
That's it.
Yep, conservation for ducks. So that's one of those things that somebody who doesn't even necessarily support hunting, who doesn't even necessarily believe in hunting, if they really do care about ducks, they could go buy one of those stamps. They're beautiful, actually, too, right? I mean, every year they're really nice.
It's great art. But yeah, it's small, so you can collect a lot of them.
Yeah, so buy a bunch. Help it out. Yeah, that's one of those things. A lot of people talk about how they care about animals. They don't hunt because they care about animals. And it's like, well, where are you putting your money? Because I know that I'm putting a lot every year is going into conservation. But I want to go back to these folks who from UC Davis. Tell us a little bit about what kind of outcomes you had when people went out and hunted for the first time.
It's all been very positive. The kids, when I say kids, they're adults. I'm just old. But they write an essay before, they write an after essay.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And it's great. There was one girl named Allison, and she was a vegan. She was a pretty diehard vegan, which I respected after she explained to me her reason for it. She's like, I don't want to buy food from a grocery store that's been maybe mistreated, maybe hormones, maybe not ethically raised. I want to know where my food comes from and take responsibility for it. And so I had her in the blind with me, and she pulled the trigger just fine. And I remember she called me up that night because we clean all the birds at the ranch, but you have to leave a wing or some identifying thing on the bird when you transport.
Yep.
Also one of those weird
so the
duck
warden
things.
can tell what kind of animal it is.
Yeah, is this a male or female? Is it this species, this species, this species? Because, like I said, it's highly, highly regulated.
Yeah.
So anyhow, she called me up when she got home. She's like, okay, I'm home. I'm ready to cook this thing up. I've got this wing. What do I do with it? Like, first,
you don't want to be like, throw it away.
I don't want to be like, just throw it in the trash.
Yeah.
Because I'm the same way. I live here at the aquarium, so I can still do a lot of that stuff. All the fish scraps and stuff.
Yep, you get to feed back into the system really.
Put them back in there, and they,
Yeah.
making a lot of other fish and crabs and lobsters happy.
Yeah.
They in turn make me happy down the road.
Yeah.
So it's
reciprocal,
very symbiotic. So I told her, I go, just give a field nearby. She goes, yeah, I got a field. I go, great. Why don't you take it out there and you could feed a skunk, a possum, coyote, whatever is going to be very, very happy and thankful to find that. She's like, oh, I can do that. But it's like it just, didn't click in her head that just because she wasn't using it, something else wasn't going to.
Well, yeah, because when you've been raised sort of segregated outside of ecology, I think that's one of the most powerful things about becoming a hunter when you didn't grow up that way is it gives you an access point to participation in the rest of the life cycle. It's almost like you're participating, but almost as a surrogate or something. You're not, it's like everything's done for you, so you don't see your interaction. So when it might not occur, it's so simple, like, but go put it in a field, something's going to eat it, but it's not that simple if you haven't been raised that way. You don't see it or understand it right away.
Yeah, you're not aware of, even in, urban settings, there's all kinds of, I lived in San Francisco for a few years. We had raccoons down there that were bigger than I've ever seen in my entire life.
Yeah, coyotes.
Yeah, I mean, just right there in the city.
Yeah.
But yeah, so there's an ecology going on around you no matter what.
Yeah.
It's just, to what level and how well it's going to thrive and do based on the carrying capacity of the area.
That's been a big part of our mission with this show is to, wherever somebody is, we have one of our taglines, there's food all around you. Mm-hmm. And because this is happening all around you. I mean, we've done episodes where we are in the backcountry, and we've done episodes where we're right in town. And one of the things I like about hunting iguanas here is, I mean, I'm doing it on Route 1 most of the time. It's just Route 1,
Cars
it's like
honking.
cars are flying by, I mean, I told Ivani on our way down here, I was like, hey, baby, if you need me, I'm right down the road, right? Because we're right off 95 and Route 1. It's like we're literally down the road.
There's no other road.
Miles. But that there is, even in urban areas, there's an ecosystem you can be participating in if you want to be. But so I assume she also probably really enjoyed that duck breast, though, huh?
She did. She thought it was actually really good. One of the other things we did is because I like to cook, I would make some wild game appetizers for him. So I think I made some duck wontons and some French onion soup, and
oh wow.
I think I made some egg rolls, some spring rolls. Duck to me lends itself very well to any kind of Asian cuisine.
Yeah, definitely.
So it's just really good.
Yeah, definitely. I'd like to circle back to your cooking too, because that's another thing. That's part of what we're doing tonight, and something that I really enjoy watching you do, I guess. I enjoy the fruits of your cooking. But so we'll circle back to that in a minute. How did you get involved diving up there?
Oh yeah.
Because that's another obscure one. I mean, obviously
is.
there's a big scene for abalone, but your average hunter fisherman probably isn't that clued into that type of a fishery.
No, that's I had family that did that. My Uncle Jack and his sons Sean and Chad were way into this, and they're a little bit younger than I was. I didn't get involved in that until I was in my 30s as well. I remember the first time I went out, it was just like I didn't get any abalone because I didn't have a weight belt, because I didn't know you needed a weight belt.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Albeit I'm in a 7mm wetsuit.
You're free diving or
yeah, free diving. But finally, I figured it out. Went with my cousins a few times, and they kind of pointed me in the right direction, and showed me a few good little honey holes that we had.
Okay, and let's back up for a second. Abalone is essentially a large snail.
It is,
and many people will have seen the shells. It's like a mother of pearl on the inside of a shell that, well, I don't know, maybe if you held both your hands out cupped together, a little bit bigger than that, right?
Yep.
I always knew them from, the people burning sage and incense
Everybody's
and
got
stuff.
like a cigarette ashtray.
Yeah, it's like exactly. But it was neat when we first met. I saw you had this big pile of these shells from being out there hunting them. So describe like how they're gotten and what that environment is. And maybe I've never done it, so I'm speaking from just, what I've read about it or watched about it and what I've heard from you. But it seems like there's some hazards associated with it too, and I don't want to be too sensational in case anybody's listening who goes, "Oh, come on, I do it all the time."
Yeah.
But it does seem like there are some essential risks.
There are. There's quite a bit of risk abalone diving, especially in California, because it's a free diving situation, and you're free diving in 10 to 50 feet of water with the spot I went might resonate with anybody that's done this before, but you've got like a layer of like 10 feet, which is like just nice clean water. There's nothing there, and then you've got kelp. The top of the kelp might be on the top of the water. It might be 10 feet down. And then you got to dive below the kelp. So you're diving through entanglements.
Yeah.
And you're not using scuba. So the last breath you have is the one you left with the surface. Mm-hmm. And you're not going to find another one down there. So some of I think a lot of the divers do either dive when it's not proper diving conditions. They get in the water anyways.
Mm-hmm. People who have problems, you're saying?
Yeah, the people that wind up on the list of
casualty list. Right. That's not warm water up there either, is it?
It's like 44 to 52.
So we're talking cold water.
Cold water, 7 mil wetsuit.
The 7 mil wetsuit, which I just got a 7 mil wetsuit to dive in Maine, and not nearly as limber in it as I am in my 3 mil. I mean, you feel the constriction. For me, my face looks like Rodney Dangerfield usually when I get into that thing. It's pressing on you so hard. And you just don't have, even in a nice open cell foam suit, I mean, you don't have the same mobility. No,
your mobility is certainly impaired. But yeah, so you got to dive down, you got to go through the kelp, and then you find an abalone. And then you got to.
And he's just crawling around on the rocks.
They're not moving.
Yeah.
They're pretty much solid on the rock, and they can hold onto that rock stronger than you can pull them off. The only way you get them off is with an abalone iron,
which looks like a large butter knife,
like
oversized butter knife,
a giant butter knife, and it's got a measure on it, so you can measure, see if they're 7 inches across at the smallest place.
Okay, so it's a gauge as well
as
a tool.
Yeah. So you got to measure and make sure they're the right size, and then you got to pump them off the rock. If you catch the abalone by surprise, they'll kind of be relaxed, just like you're sitting in a recliner, you're just chilled out. That's fine, but you get alarmed, you're gonna be a little bit harder of a target to take advantage of if you're sitting on the couch having a beer. So you can actually get up to them and just get right up underneath them. I'm using hand signals here, and it's great. And take that abalone bar and shove it underneath the abalone and pull them off at the same time. You want to do it in a very smooth motion so that you don't harm the abalone, because I measure mine, roughly. You don't want to touch them with the measure before you pull them off, but if you do, they'll suck on the rock. You're not getting that abalone. But if you cut
with the tool,
okay, yeah, and the abalone iron is kind of rounded. It's designed not to harm the abalone, but as long as you're really smooth with it, you can do really well. But if you cut the abalone, he will not stop bleeding.
Oh wow! So it's lethal for him.
It's lethal. So you got to be very careful. And the abalone fishery, I believe, is closed in California this year.
Oh, no kidding.
The kelp has disappeared. There's been a number of sea urchins that have kind of moved in.
Oh, right.
And the sea urchins have really decimated the environment that the abalone need. Mm-hmm. So there's plenty of sea urchins there now.
We switched to an urchin fishery.
To an urchin fishery for now. So we'll see how that goes.
What about one of the things that I hear that abalone divers encounter white sharks from time to time as well in those kelp forests, and that I also hear that there can be problems because in those conditions of low vis and lots of kelp, it's easy for maybe a shark to mistake a diver for is it a sea lion that they're feeding on?
Seal, yeah. As a matter of fact, one of the spots I dived was really good and also had sharks in it. But I think as long as you're not I really don't know. I think if it's your time, it's your time. So I don't really focus on it. There's an ab diver, and he was a really good guy. I didn't know him personally, but I know his story. His last name was Fry. And he was up in Bodega Bay, and he was diving to get abalone to do some sort of a fundraiser thing. They were going to cook a bunch of abalone. And the last thing he said is, I'll be right back and grab this ab. Dove down, came up, no head.
Man. Oh, wow.
Shark bit his head off, spit it out.
Wow.
But yeah, so
that kind of thing can happen for sure.
Yeah, and it's in the back of your head, especially when, my one spot I have, there's a few seals. In fact, there's one seal that's kind of there year round and kind of a resident, and he's white with these black spots, and he looks really aggressive when he comes at you underwater, but he's really totally just chill. But his game was, He'd see you get in the water. He'd slip in the water. He'd wait for you to pull an ab off. And on your way up, while you're holding that abalone in your hands coming up to the surface, he swims at you underwater and barks at you like inches from your face mask, and bubbles hit your face and everything. But he's just barking and thinking you're going to hold your hands up in the air and scream.
He's trying to get you to drop it.
Drop the abalone. Then he's going to swoop in and take the ab. I was aware of his game. So it's just, he was a cool sea lion. I'd see him jump in the water. I knew it was coming. It was like it happened 3 or 4 times with the same dude. So.
Yeah. What did you do with them once you get them to the surface?
Got to tag them. So you were issued a number of tags.
Oh yeah, you'd have to tag them.
Like a deer.
Yeah, no kidding.
Fill out your report card, all that kind of stuff.
Right.
Then you take off your gear. I mean, that's the first thing I did pretty much. Put a tag on them, get my gear off, write out the paperwork. And then the place I went was about a mile away from the road, so you actually had to hike. And so it was good because nobody wanted to work that hard to get abs.
Yeah, right.
But I didn't work that hard to get abs because I just jumped in the water and I was out. I was done. You know?
It's somewhere around a mile, I find, is where you start to get that cutoff point where you weed out the 90% of where, people who would go there.
It depends on how steep it is too. Because
yeah, exactly. It's another vector. Yeah.
But yeah, it's logistically a tough thing, but because I was duck hunting and working on the refuge with that, you use a hand cart for moving your stuff around. I call it my grocery cart when I'm out in the woods. Mm-hmm. And I just load everything up in that, push it down to the shore, put my gear on. I've got 20 pounds of weights, all my ab gear, my 7mm wetsuit, my inner tube, my ab iron. I mean, the list goes on. And towel for when you're done, a couple of drinks of water when you get out of the ocean, and rinse off, that kind of stuff. And then, so it's pretty easy if I use my grocery cart and just go anywhere I want in the world with that thing. Yeah.
And did you have to register them anywhere, or you just had to have a tag for transportation?
You gotta have a tag, and then you gotta mail in your report card.
Oh, okay, gotcha. Yeah. And then how'd you cook them? And what are they like?
They're amazing. Everybody thinks it is a mollusk, but when you think mollusk, you think slimy, kind of escargot-y. They have no bones, which is great, but they are the hardest meat in the world because when they
tighten right up.
They tighten up. They get angry and they tighten up.
Like hardest as in hardest to cook?
Hard as in like
literally hard.
Yeah, dense, right?
Like dense.
It's because I can imagine them being able to contract. Like you see a snail, like a periwinkle, can stretch out 2-3 times his body length, and then he contracts right up. So
exactly,
it's like
so
imagine how dense he gets.
They've got this thing around the outside of the shell where all their gonads and entrails and stuff are. So the first thing you do is you pop them out of the shell with the ab iron. It also works to do that. And once you get them out of the shell, you cut off all those, get rid of that stuff. It's
probably got like a ligament that he attaches to the inside of that shell with or something?
Yeah, it's like the whole foot. The whole thing is like a foot. Okay. And it's all just connected to that shell up in there. And it's probably a good 2 or 3 inch diameter area. Kind of like when you eat a mussel and they've got the little,
Yep, that adductor muscle that they hold in there with.
Yeah, and they're not letting go. Yeah, it's not like they trade shells ever.
Right.
They don't trade them.
They just extrude that one shell.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay, so you cut them out of that.
So you pop them out of that, clean them. Traditionally, there's this piece, and it's kind of like the little gonad. They call it the strength of the abalone, and that's a little treat you can get at the table where you're cleaning them, especially if you got someone there who's a little squeamish.
Okay.
Just pop that in your mouth. And
what's it look like?
It looks like a gonad. I mean, it looks
like a testicle, or like an ovary.
Like
you mean?
A testicle and junk.
Yeah. Okay. It's the whole kit.
Yeah. It's the whole
and junk.
Okay. I'm thinking of when.
It's the twigs and berries.
I'm thinking of down in Bahamas last year. I was eating, or I guess it was this year, but I was eating conch, and when you crack the conch out, you get this long, clear. Noodle thing. I don't know, and they call it the same thing.
Very similar.
Eat that fresh right out of there, and they tell you it makes you virile.
Same thing with the abalone, but it looks exactly like that. It's just, it's long and thin and kind of transparent. It's got a little stuff on the end.
Okay, got it.
So it's a little chewy, but it's good. So then you take the abalone and then you slice it into about 1/4 inch pieces all the way across is one way. Some people cook them whole, but that's more kind of traditional, and I've never done that. Slice it thin, pound it out with a meat pounder, just enough to relax the meat, not enough to pulverize it.
Yeah.
I use the smooth side.
Yep.
So it just relaxes the meat, not macerates it. You don't want you know,
shredded
fried steak.
up,
Yeah. Because it's just shredded up really tough pieces of little things. When you hit it with that smooth side, you make it just relax. It's perfect. And then I just fry it in butter with
What are
some
they, like a quarter
garlic.
inch thick, thinner?
Yeah. You start off with like a quarter inch, you pound them out to about
Yeah.
1/8 inch.
Yeah, flattens them out a bit.
Flattens them out, relaxes them. But there's a difference between relaxed and flat versus
okay, gotcha.
tense and pulverized.
Gotcha. The key is relaxed.
My cousin, Chad, he's like the master of this. He's got this 4x4 thing that he whittled down a handle on. It's really just a 4x4 post. You know, like from, what was that movie with the guy? The Rock with the, I can't remember, Walking Tall.
Oh yeah. Sure. I was thinking Hacksaw Jim Duggan from my childhood.
Yeah, like Walking Tall. And so he's got this thing, and he can hit him the whole abalone one time when it's out of the shell. And relax the whole thing.
No kidding. Okay.
And so it's like I don't know how to do it. I tried it a few times. I just stick to what I know.
Magic touch.
He's got some sort of a touch because I hit one time and a little bit too much oomph on it and really just messed up an abalone.
Hence your warnings about destroying them.
Yeah.
Is it texturally like conch?
It is very similar to conch texturally. Yep. It's also very much like kind of like calamari.
Yep. Yeah,
but not really.
I get you.
Yeah. But it's a real warm, buttery kind of flavor going on.
I'd really like to try that.
What will you do with it to prepare it?
Just, melt some butter, a little garlic, do that, sear it in garlic.
Just sear those flat pieces.
Yeah, just kind of simmer them down.
Okay.
You can also bread them. You can always bread and fry anything, but then you kind of you don't get to appreciate what it really tastes like.
Yeah, that's what I don't like about those conch fritters. I feel like I always want to peel them out of there. I like to eat the conch. I'd rather just eat the conch personally, but
right. And I would save like all the foot, and it's black, so you got to scrub it. Scrub it pretty good. But then I'll throw it in the blender with some cornmeal and carrots, onion, celery, salt, pepper, and then make fritters out of the abalone. Yeah, little croquettes.
Yeah.
But that's stuff I normally would have just thrown away because it's this black, off-colored looking stuff.
Right, but it's actually good food.
It's good. It's protein. It's good. Worked hard to get it.
Hey, we'll get right back to the show, but I wanted to take a moment to tell you how you can see Season 1 of WildFed. If you head over to wild-fed.com right now, you'll see that pre-orders for Season 1 are available alongside the Season 1 experience. Both will begin on January 6th of 2020. If you choose the show on its own, you'll get access to a new episode every week for 8 weeks. Remember, these are 30-minute episodes, not the 22 minutes of a typical TV show. If you choose the program, it'll include Season 1, but each week, along with a new episode, you'll receive a director's cut, where our producer Grant Giuliano and I break down the episode, discussing the background, the gear we use, the places and people and stories involved, as well as some of the comedy that took place on the side, some of the drama, some of the intrigue that we couldn't squeeze into the 30-minute format. You'll also get exclusive access to a weekly live Q&A, where we'll be answering your questions and discussing how you can get started hunting, fishing, and foraging for food. Additionally, this will all take place inside of a private member group where you'll have access to me and the WildFed team for a full 9 weeks, as well as a community of like-minded folks. If you just want to see the show on its own, it's $49. If you want to join me in the 9-week program, that's just $249. Go over to wild-fed.com to get the show or sign up for the program. Now, here's the rest of the podcast.
Skip us ahead till now. So now here you are. You find yourself in the Keys, and you get down here, and of course there's the key deer, but they're not on the hunting list.
They're not on the shopping list.
Unfortunately, they're not on the. You can't put them in the grocery cart.
And it's weird because they're overpopulated for what they are.
That's an interesting point because the population's quite small, but they're in they're on quite a small island, right? So
right, but the carrying capacity of that island has been changed because people are living on it. Right. And just because people are living there doesn't mean it's going to reduce the carrying capacity. People are living there. They're planting lawns. They're planting fruit trees. They're putting out water. Their air conditioners down here. I mean, I make 20 gallons of water out of my air conditioner a day.
Wow, I hadn't really thought about that.
So
so you're condensing atmospheric water, humidity.
Yeah.
Are the key deer only on one island?
They're pretty much on Big Pine Key and some of the lower keys.
Okay.
There's a reason they're not up here in Marathon is because we're on the rock here is coral, so it's very porous. so it doesn't hold
No water.
when it rains.
Right.
Unlike Big Pine Key does have some hard rock, which will hold fresh
Oh,
water.
okay. So they're not. I thought this whole archipelago was Coral Cay, but there are some.
Yeah, Big Pine's got some
points.
hard rocks. There's some areas in it, and those islands there will hold pooling fresh water and have traditionally done so.
Okay. Now the deer. Do you know how big the deer population is?
I think it's under 1,000.
Yeah, that's what I thought too. This is a subspecies of white-tailed deer.
Yep.
But what is a big one? Like, what do they weigh?
It's almost like a California deer, like a small California deer, probably 42 pounds on the hook.
Yeah. So really interesting. But okay, so they're not on the shopping list.
No.
So you got down here and you decide to put yourself out there in the nature's grocery store. What are you going for?
I'm going for fish often.
I mean, the fishing here is just incredible.
Fish
What's
and lobster.
the joke that you make about the island?
It's a quaint little drinking village with a fishing problem.
Yeah.
That wasn't a joke.
It's not a
That's the
joke.
slogan.
It's largely fishing and drinking down here, drinking and fishing. But the fishing here is just incredible. My goodness.
It's like I'm spoiled now. It's like I don't even know how I can go back to regular fishing anymore. I went out the other day. We went to dry Tortugas. I mean, the fishing here is very, very good, but the further you get away from people, the better the fishing is always.
I mean, this fishery just must get hammered. There's so many boats. When we were driving down, the first thing I was saying to Grant, I was like, "You're not going to believe how many boats there are down here."
Like, try to find a car dealer down here. You're not going to see one, but
Yeah, it's true.
you'll see 100 boat dealers.
Yep.
And last night when we went out,
Yeah, it's 4th of July last
How
night.
many boats do you think were out there?
Probably 2,000.
I mean, just everywhere.
Never seen anything like that.
It was like being at the drive-in, but it was boats, right? Just incredible boats everywhere for the fireworks show. So obviously, if you get away a little bit, because they must just be hammering these reefs.
Well, yeah, they do, but the fish are highly migratory, so
they're rolling through from all over.
There's more where they're coming from, depending on which kind they are.
Conveyor belt keeps turning.
But like it's just going to the Tortugas was the first time I've been there, and I've been down here for 5 years.
And the Tortugas are a state park.
It's a national park. It's about 70 miles off of the tip of Key West.
Okay.
So it's an old fort they built during Civil War. I really didn't look into the history of it, but it was pretty cool to see. The fishing around there immediately is restricted to where you cannot do it, but you can go. We were 10 miles off of Fort Jefferson down there, and the first thing that just took me was like, oh my gosh, there's grouper. We limited out on grouper. We had 3 people on the boat. We were limited out like in a couple hours.
Wow. So that's fishing on the reef.
Yeah, we were in about 60 to 100 feet of water, and the water was so clear. My friend's wife was on the boat. She's leaning over the rail, going, "Okay, there's a fish coming towards your hotel."
Oh my goodness, really, huh?
Yeah, it's that clear.
Where you can
I'm like,
sight
is it
fish
a big
the grouper?
one? We were sight fishing grouper. I'm like, is it a big one? She goes, no, pull it away. I'm like,
Oh man.
kind of waiting for the big one. So we did very well with the grouper, and then we did very well with the yellowtail snapper, which is here I could go out and limit on a yellowtail snapper pretty much any day of the week. Yeah. They're all going to be 12 to 13 inches here. Down there, they were all, the smallest one we kept was 16, largest one we had was 24 inches.
Yeah, wow.
So it's just huge difference in the quality and size of the fish.
Right.
Because, I saw 0 other boats out there fishing.
So they're just able to grow larger.
There's less pressure.
Yep.
Yeah, just like anything else.
And then you guys must have done some trolling, right? Because I saw some mahi.
We did some trolling on the way back in, and we got as many mahi as I cared to clean.
Yeah.
We got up 25.
Poor you.
Yeah, well, you only push a fillet knife through so many fish before you're done.
Before your wrist is just aching. We, up in Maine, I mean, I'm grateful for the fisheries we have, including that lobster that we have, that
the real lobster,
the one that has claws. But yeah, we just don't have this kind of fishery that you have here. Right, so you're out there reef fishing and trolling are your kind of 2 mainstays. Yep. But then you also have some crab pots too. I mean, the last time I was here, we were out pulling crab pots together.
I do. Recreationally, each person here in Florida can have 5 crab pots each. Mm-hmm. So I've got 5. My wife has got 5. And running 10 crab pots is pretty easy work down here. It's not like Deadliest Catch where you got these giant crab pots. I mean, these things are like a foot by a foot by a foot by a foot. They're not that big.
They're small
little things. The stone crab are awesome because you don't harvest the whole crab. you come up, you can grab the crab and apply certain pressure in the right areas, and the claws will literally just pop off. And then the crab is fine, and he's set free to go grow his own claws.
I thought isn't that neat?
That's crazy.
Yeah, and I was really surprised at how strong they were.
Super
like the
strong.
first couple that I pulled out of the pot, holding him, I just didn't expect that he could contract those claws together strongly. So once you get the hang of it, it's no problem. But the first couple, you're like, whoa, wait a second. They
I
feel like they can
metal
get a hold
gloves.
of me. Yeah, exactly.
So does anybody take the whole crab?
No.
There'd be there's no need, and then you don't have all that scrap either. So
Their claws they grow are like, it's like, you see those fiddler crabs with like those giant claws. They're like, I got this claw. And then they got this other little tiny claw,
those ones we were looking at this morning, they come walking out with that one massive, oversized, as big as his body, right?
Exactly.
It's like overcompensating.
Totally overcompensating. Stone crabs do the same thing, but they're all like, they give them up easy too, so which is nice. And then they grow new ones.
How long does it take?
I don't know.
Hadn't you told me something once that they used to take just the one claw?
Yeah. So they used to take one claw because people are going, "Oh, poor crab, you're leaving him defenseless."
Leave him a claw at least.
Well, leave him a claw at least. So the thing with the crabs is they like the males will compete and they will kill each other. If a male with two claws comes across a male with one claw, the male with two claws is going to win pretty much all the time. So they decided. Wildlife biologist somewhere probably a lot smarter than me about this, but makes sense. If you take both claws, the crab will go hide until he has got two claws to go fuck with someone. Instead of be like, I can still rock my world here with this one claw. Look at how big it is.
I'll fight you even with one claw.
Yeah, so it takes that I think that out of the equation, and so they just go chill until they got some claws to go fuck with each other with.
I love that. I just think that's really neat that it's a non-lethal harvest, because we talk about that with plants all the time. We have certain plants that we harvest that you got to, let's say it's the root is what you use, then you've got a lethal harvest, so you've got to really think about how you're stewarding that colony of plants. And then and sometimes people will, it's amazing how many people get upset with you for harvesting plants. You would think that was more in the hunting world, but I know we're just coming through our milkweed harvest, and the number of people that will get on you about monarch butterflies. They don't understand fully the ecology. We're thoughtful about how that all works, but the monarchs primarily are feeding on the leaves. We take the flowers. We only take 50% of the flowers, but everybody, the monarch butterflies. But it's like, it's a non-lethal harvest. Don't worry. But with animals, it's like, it's usually a lethal harvest. So the idea that you could just take a piece and it grows back is just pretty cool to me. I like
just
that.
Borrow this.
Yeah, if you don't mind, sir, I'm just going to grab your hands real quick. See you in a couple of months. Oh man, that's interesting. Anything else and you also, I've gone out with you and floundered around while you were scooping up one lobster after the next during the season. So that's another thing that you do, and you're able. And Florida allows you to do that on scuba, right?
Yeah. Which I think if they would allow scuba for abalone, that would be a lot safer for everybody.
Mm-hmm. I wanted to mention, because one of the things that stands out to me about ab diving is that when I took my freediving course over in North Palm Beach, I was asking them about compression sickness. Can it happen with freediving? And they were like, it's so rare because you're not breathing that compressed air. So when you come to the surface, the bends is not a thing you really deal with in freediving. But they were like, except occasionally ab divers, because they come up, grab air, run down, up, down so much that that occasionally they'll get the bends, huh?
No, I've never had it happen. I've heard people have that happen. It's also what almost happened to me was I just get distracted when you start freediving a lot. You can get that piece of your brain that says you need to breathe now to shut up.
Yeah.
And just kind of go into,
I'm not there yet.
I'm just going into the other room, and it's like you just send that piece into a different realm. Mm-hmm. And so you're down there abalone diving, you're like, okay, well, here's a nice one. You pop it off. Oh, there's another one there. And you start popping it off, and you look and you go, oh, there's a third one. And I'm like, oh, wait a minute. I've still got to swim 50 feet up to the top through some kelp and get a breath of air at some point. And, like my wife would watch from the cliff. I don't know what good she would have ever done other than tell them where to find the body.
Yeah, exactly.
But she's like, you're underwater for 2.5, 3 minutes. And you totally just forget to breathe after a while.
Wow.
Especially, you just kind of get comfortable with it, especially if you start doing scuba, because you're used to that regulator being in your mouth, and you can just take a breath whenever you want. You don't really remember, oh, I still got to go swim 50 feet.
Right.
Through great white sharks and kelp and
right to the field of sharks and kelp. But I assume they don't want you to use scuba to reduce the take a little bit, right? It seems like I guess if they issue tags, but
if they're issuing tags, and I think it's just they want to stay away from people doing it illegally. And if you're on scuba, you can literally scoot out from the beach and scoot back in, and no one's going to know the wiser.
Right. Also, I feel like when they issue tags, which means I don't really know, but I as I understand it, when they issue tags in a lot of hunting situations anyway, there's some expected number of failure and successes, right?
Yeah.
So it's like
it's not like going to be 100%.
If they give everybody 2 tags, that doesn't mean it would be acceptable for every person who had 2 tags to get 2, right? So the idea
person is you.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So let's say you get a 30% success rate, and they're building the number of tags issued off of that. So it seems like they would probably have to adjust. But anyway, back to here, you can use scuba for what you guys call lobsters, which I just think is not right. They should be called something else.
Well, technically, I think they call them crayfish down here.
Yeah.
There
you go.
They're not. They're not lobster.
I actually
lobsters.
really like them though. They are delicious.
They're sweet. I like the Maine lobster
They're
better.
lean, I find, compared to.
They're not fat and buttery. They're not all fatty and stuff.
Yeah, I mean, when you cook Maine lobsters, you get like those globs of fat that accumulate inside the shell between the meat, or sometimes it comes right out into the water. Whereas the crawfish here, they're lean, but I enjoy that, and interesting that Avani likes them a little bit more than she likes them. That's starting to change now. It's starting to change. She's getting a real taste for Maine. She's getting a taste for Maine lobster. But anyway, so that's another fishery out here that you got access to.
Yeah. You can recreationally, you can take 6 per person per day.
Yeah, during the season.
The season, and then we have a mini season, but that's kind of weird because mini season is like 2 weeks before the commercial season opens, kind of give the recreational guys a chance, I guess. I don't know what the deal is there, but this place turns into a complete zoo.
I bet.
Everybody and their mothers down here, getting their lobster, their mom's lobster, everybody else's lobster, and it's just, it's like the impact is like so hard on the environment because there's going to be thousands and thousands of boats out there grabbing all these lobsters for 2 days, and it's just like a free for all almost,
During the mini season, you're talking about.
During the mini season,
whereas it's more diffuse throughout the
regular season. It's like, oh, it's a nice day, I can go. Or mini season rolls around here and it's blowing 30 miles an hour and
it's
shitty.
like a Wisconsin deer opener or something. It's like everybody's there that day.
They're going. It doesn't matter what it looks like.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. And the method of take for lobsters here, because here's another difference down in little differences between here and Bahamas because you share essentially the same sea, right?
Yeah.
Or parts of the same sea. Down there, you can't use spear guns. It's pole spear only. Here, you can use spear guns when you dive. Down there, you can spear lobsters. Here, you cannot, right? So here you cannot take conch. Down there, for some reason, you can, and boy, they're going to push them right to the brink if they can. What is the method of take with lobsters here? How does that work?
No spear, so it's hand. You can use a tickle stick and a net.
Or snare too, right?
I love the snare. It's less equipment in the water, less things to go wrong, less things to keep track of. You literally put that snare over the lobster and pull it to your hand, and you've got a lobster in your hand. It's just ready to put in your bag. You don't have to tickle it out of some hole and then put a net behind it and kind of try to get this net. It's like, it's so cumbersome to do that.
Yeah.
And I like to free dive for the lobster because, the scuba is nice, but you're checking 20, 30 holes a day. It's like doing 20, 30 dives. It's going to be, even though it's only 10 feet, it's still going to be a pain in the ass.
Yep.
So just being able to just dive in really quick, grab a couple with a snare, get on your way.
Yeah. Man, I'd like to get better at it because I really like eating them. Oh, I wanted to ask you about when we're out on Cocoa Plum, I see stacks and stacks and stacks of traps. Are those lobster traps or crab traps?
Yeah, they're either lobster or crab. We've got millions of traps are in the water here during season.
Yeah.
The big square or the big rectangular wooden ones.
Those are the ones I'm seeing.
Those are the lobster traps.
Okay.
The crab
call them
pots.
like lobster hotels or something. What do they call those?
Yeah, it's a lobster trap, and I'm not keen.
Lobster condo. There's something
it's
they
lobster
call
condo. I'm not really into how they lobster fish down here, and I've talked to a few guys that do it. Some of them don't even use bait. They just leave other lobsters in the trap.
Oh,
And then because
okay.
there's a lobster in there, the other lobster's like, hey, that looks like a cool place. I'm going to come hang out with you.
Yeah. Wow, no kidding. That's interesting. Yeah, so they're just using it as cover.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
There's so many things going on down here. I mean, we could go on and on. I want to talk a little bit about cooking and what we're doing tonight, but
Yep.
I was curious how you got into iguana hunting.
Well, there's a lot of iguanas here, and I've always been kind of, fascinated by it. And also, frankly, they're kind of a nuisance down here.
when did you start here? I mean,
I've been
from
here
when
for
you
5 years.
Yeah, okay, so it was already a full-blown issue by then, or have
Yeah.
you seen an uptick in the amount? It's hard for me to get a sense of whether I'm getting sent iguana articles all the time by people because I do this, or if there's more and more media coming out about it. Or
I'm seeing a lot
both.
more media coming out about it, and
Okay.
I think it's a drive because it's going to help the ecology down here to get to control them, and we're never going to get rid of them. Mm-mm. It's like the lionfish, but the lionfish, the lessons they've taken from that is train people to eat them. We will reduce the numbers of them, and lionfish are just flat out delicious anyway. So there's it's not hard to train someone to eat them. It's just everybody freaks out because, oh my God, it's a poisonous fish.
Well, I was going to say, I mean, you have barriers to entry with both
Yeah.
lionfish and iguanas. With lionfish, it's that, hey, if I get stung by this,
might
it's going
kill
to be
me.
excruciating, if not worse. With iguanas, it's obviously, this is a lizard,
It's
and
not
that
gonna
really
kill me,
freaks
but-
people. Yeah, it's
I
just
used to have one.
Yeah, exactly. That's a great point. Is I had a pet one, you had a pet. You ever have a pet
I had a
iguana?
pet
So
one.
all three of us sitting here, growing up in different places, all had pet iguanas, and I have a lot of people who are sympathetic to them because of that, despite the fact that they're not good for the ecology down here. There's two things going on down here, though, that I hear. One is impact on other species and habitat, that gets damaged. The other one is that they damage, people's landscaping. And that one I'm like, it's not that I don't care about that, but it's just like less of, I hold living things above landscaping.
landscape.
So that's
Yeah.
less important to me. I don't use that as a pitch for why I do it. But so since you've been down here, you've seen an uptick in the public's awareness of the problem with iguanas.
I have. I've also seen an uptick in the number of iguanas.
Yeah, I bet.
I don't know if you've noticed since the first time you've been down.
I mean, it is like, I think about it. I was thinking about it a lot this week that, we what do we take this week? 15 of them, let's say, maybe 20. But we're not making an impact.
No.
Which is at all. I mean, we would walk back. We'd find an area that's good, and we would walk, let's say, 50 yards back and forth, and we'd get to the yard number 50 and would grab one, and then we'd work our way back to yard 1, and we'd grab 3 more on the way back, and then we'd walk back to 50, and there'd be 3 more. They just keep coming. Like, for every one you take, it feel like 2, 3 more would come back right behind you where you just were, because you'd grab one and
Thanks for
scare the
making
rest
space
off.
for me.
Yeah, exactly. That's what it feels like. So you'd have to, anyway. But you were saying training people to eat them, which I do think
Yeah.
is the only way we're going to really at
get
least
a
start to
handle on it.
knock them
Or
down.
Take advantage of it. I mean, it's a resource. It's biomass.
Yes,
It's taking up
I agree with that.
a niche here, and if it's not checked, or let's go back to the wildlife management. What's the carrying capacity of iguanas on an acre land in the Keys? I don't know.
Yeah.
The cool thing that you said yesterday is that it's not regulated, so you can sell it.
Yeah.
that's a
There's a American Alligator, I think, is selling iguana because he was processing the skins, and I read this in an article that they're selling it as exotic meat for like $45 to $55
I need to
a
get that
pound.
article from you. I went, and we'll link it in the show notes.
Yeah.
I went back to, somebody had sent it to me, but then I realized they'd only sent me a screenshot. That's why I didn't read the
Shoot it in
article.
the trees.
So I need to get that article. But that's an interesting point. That's I'm not clear on the sale of it or not, but that makes sense to me. I'll look more into that. But there is the only regulation I'm aware of is that you cannot, you have to quickly and humanely dispatch them.
Yeah. Real quick, you do have to have like a wildlife products license to sell them or something. But
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, you can't
Yeah.
start like a lemonade stand and
No.
start selling
There
it.
you
Yeah,
go.
that makes
But
more sense to me.
Potentially, somebody could start a company.
Yeah, good point.
That's
I mean,
taking
it'd be
out
great.
a lot of them.
Yeah. But no, dispatching them is difficult. So when I first moved down here, I had a 22 caliber pellet gun. I'm like, this thing kills turkeys at 30 yards. No problem.
Right.
which we were legally allowed to do in California.
Just to be clear.
Just to be clear. Not that I ever did it, just asking for a friend. But no, I noticed I shot an iguana here, and it was a really good shot. I know shot placement. I know where to shoot something.
Right.
And I shot him in the head because I'm like, you don't want to ruin any of the meat, and I call it a depression shot. So you save all the meat.
Depression shot.
During the Great Depression, you don't want to lose anything.
No meat damage.
No meat damage, it's a depression shot. So I shot this iguana right in the head, and he literally shook it off and jumped in the canal.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I know he's going to die.
Yeah, but he's going to go off and die somewhere else.
He's going to be crab food, not gym food. So that was kind of, we live here with the canals and stuff. They can easily escape into the water, and then they're just gone.
Yep. We lost more into not lost as in injured them, but going out to get them, more got away into the water than we ever got, for sure.
That sounded like a big one.
Yeah, you just hear a huge splash. Yeah.
Sploosh. Yeah, so I quickly realized the pellet gun was not the weapon of choice because, A, I'm in an urban environment here. If someone sees me walking around outside with a pellet gun, the police are going to be outside with the guns drawn.
Yeah,
so
it's a way to get shot.
It's a good way to get shot, especially if my pellet gun's got this giant scope on it. It looks pretty intimidating, but it's a fucking BB gun.
Yeah.
Until
we can educate the public better.
I was
Best to leave the pellet gun at home.
Paint the tip orange. I don't know.
Oh, that's brilliant.
Maybe paint the tips of all my ARs orange. I don't know.
That's a great idea. I've never seen anyone do that. That's really funny.
Psych. So no, I realized, but I also realized these iguanas don't give one rat's ass if you're about 10 feet away from them.
Yep.
If it's super hot and they're feeling a little jumpy, then yeah, but for the most part, they don't care if you're 10 feet away from them. I'm like,
that's right about the zone. I would say 12 to 8 feet is where they start to, their head starts to bob.
Sorry, I'm making a hand signal where my head kind of just bobs
real
up and
rapid.
down.
It reminds me of when a squirrel's onto you and he starts to do that with his tail.
With his tail or his feet.
Yeah.
Sometimes they tap their feet.
So you'll see that. It's like, I get the impression that they're doing that to communicate
to the other ones.
Before you go with where I think you're headed with this, I just want to go back to what you were saying about shooting one in the head, because it's that reptile physiology. It's hard to kill reptiles. And when, even if you deliver the lethal shot, it's like his swimming and running ability still exists even when he's dead. I mean, when we recently, both you and I are alligator hunters. I'm a new alligator hunter, and we dealt with, I showed you that video of this alligator getting a full erection after he'd been dead an hour, or his tail. I remember we had him up on the butchering table, and that serpentine motion of his tail and spine went on and on for hours and hours and hours. So you could imagine an iguana swimming 100 yards away, dead, not even alive anymore. So if people are wondering, well, what if you take a heart shot? What if you take a lung shot? It's like, it doesn't matter. Their nervous system continues going. So
it does. It's like, have you ever killed a rattlesnake? Mm-mm. Or any snake?
No.
So I killed this one rattlesnake, skinned it out, had it sit in a tree. I mean, it's got no guts, no head. It's literally just meat, and it's still moving.
Yeah.
And I tap it on the head, and it coils up like it's going to strike with the head.
Oh, wow.
I'm like, how does it even know?
Yeah.
There's no guts, no head, no skin. Yeah. It's got a spine on it, and nerves all the way down that spine, but it's still very much moving and seems to be situationally
almost
aware.
Situationally. That's what I've had that with the snapping turtle, where its head was off and had been off for over an hour. I'd let him relax. And as I'm skinning him, he's grabbing the knife with both hands. And not even my grabbing it's like he's grabbing the knife like he can see it, and he's trying to keep it out of him. It was like, how is it doing that? Or when we've, a couple times now, we had an iguana in the snare, and I realized he was slipping out of the snare. I grabbed his tail. He breaks his tail off and takes off running. And there's that tail stays in your hand moving for quite some time, not even connected to the central nervous system.
When we opened the cooler, there was a tail in there that was still
just moving still. So you realize it's not going to work to shoot him, but you can get close to him.
It's not going to work, but the snare is that's been something I've used forever. I mean, I've snared probably a lot of things and a lot of stuff I didn't mean to. I'll tell you, a skunk and a snare is not a fun story.
I bet. But when we met, you had a lobster snare basically taped onto a fishing rod.
Yeah.
Which works great.
It worked good, and we've improved it since then. So I think we're up to
that was Gen 1.
Yeah,
we're on Gen 5 now.
On Gen 5 now.
The addition of the swivel was really important.
The swivel was key.
The swivel was key.
Remember that iguana that broke the aircraft cable?
Yeah, oh yeah, spinning it. The big one.
The big one that we got over there.
But you still managed to get. I went up to that second floor. I got him off the tree. I mean, that was one that's like sort of at the limits of how big they get. He was like turned orange, the big orange one.
Big orange.
I got a hold of him. He spun and broke that steel cable.
His aircraft cable, he broke it with his,
because he had no swivel yet.
I mean, that thing had to compress so hard on him.
Then he hit that roof, fell off of that, hit the ground. You took the snare, turned it around backwards, and thunked him over the head, and then we got him.
Slowed him down a little bit and jumped on him.
Grabbed him, yeah, wow. I mean, that was probably one of the bigger. I think I've got two, that one and one other one that was a big one like that. But those guys are hard to get at.
Well, yeah, they've been around a while.
Yeah, they figured out how to stay out of harm's way. But so you figured out the snare, and that I think is just the perfect. Yesterday or 2 days ago, Grant and I were out there, and he was trying to dream up all these different projectiles. What if you had a gig with a rocket launcher? What if you had, you were coming up with all these different things. And I was like, you know what? I just think the snare is the best because first of all, walking around the streets here, people are so used to seeing fishing rods that it doesn't really stand out that much. Yeah. Nobody blinks at it. There's no explosion. You're not making any noise. So people aren't really concerned about that. You don't have to worry about over penetrating or hitting something you didn't intend to. I like that about it. And they let you get within range really easily, and you have zero meat damage.
Right.
Which I really like as well.
And you can dispatch them quickly and humanely.
Yeah.
And not, I hate the thought of shooting something and knowing it's out there. I mean, I've lost one deer in my entire life, and it wasn't even one I shot. A buddy of mine shot a deer. We were in Wyoming, and it turned into a overnight thing where we had to find it, and it's like I can't sleep till we're done.
Yeah, it sucks injuring something. It was so cool getting that iguana that we broke the tail off of him and he got away because it broke high. It broke higher than I'd seen before, and I was like, oh, is he gonna be okay? And then I was able to snag him 10 minutes later, and that was just like
nice.
Felt
yes,
great.
He's gonna be fine.
Yeah, he's gonna make a fine.
Make some great tacos.
He's gonna be fine in the brine. Well, let's talk about cooking iguanas, and the first ones that I got with you, we brined and smoked, and I got in the habit of picking them. So boning them out basically after they've been smoked, picking them off the bones, then bringing that home, freezing it, vacuum sealing and freezing it. And usually what I do is I take it out, I put it in my blender, my Vitamix blender, shred it down till it's almost like, I'm trying to think of like pulled pork kind of.
Okay.
And then I'll refry that with cumin and other taco type spices, and that's fantastic as a taco filling. But we're experimenting with some other stuff.
Yeah.
Tonight,
we're gonna mess around a little bit tonight.
Talk to us about what you're thinking there and what you're doing.
So tonight we're gonna take. I noticed it's a lot of work to skin these iguanas out, and then I did some research and looked and saw in the Caribbean, they make a lot of iguana stew, and they do it with the skin on, and they do barbecued iguana with the skin on. Barbecuing the iguana and making the stew of the iguana without parboiling it is going to produce a very tough meat with skin that's still pretty tough. You want to really cook it. So right now as we're sitting here, actually sitting on the stove, chilling out, I brought some water to a boil, put the iguanas in, skin and all, gutted and deheaded for the most part. And then letting them set in that water until it gets back to room temperature. So I'll parboil them, and then we can proceed to make other dishes with them, just as you would for chicken or something like that.
So are you going to take the skin off eventually, or no?
No, that's up to the.
That's the end user's job.
That's the end user's job. Yeah. People. Okay. The reason they leave the skin on it was two reasons. One is it comes off much easier after you cook it. Two is you're getting iguana meat, so people like to know they're actually getting iguana meat and not monkey meat or something.
Yeah, sure. Yeah,
that
makes sense.
That tells me people are preferring
iguana.
The iguana, they want to see that's actually iguana that they're getting and not some other lizard.
I read a lot that Puerto Rico.
What is the other lizard?
Yeah, exactly. Monitor. I hear that Puerto Rico's got a really good thing going right now with using iguana. You know, they are eating the invader, and that's working really well over there. And I guess it's quite in demand. I just really hope that, and we're hoping with this show that at least we can turn some people onto it and increase the desire for it. That people will see how we're doing it, and it's that weird thing where it's like, I don't really want to compete with people over them.
No.
And the idea of them just being gone one day, which would mean success, like we had eradicated them from southern Florida.
Success.
It would be like, oh, I guess I'll go for lionfish. I don't, like, I would be sad, but also that is the goal. I remember, you know, we've seen now, Grant and I, some little ones where it's like, oh, you know, he's little, don't kill him. It's like, wait, no, kill him.
Yeah.
Or like, oh, there's one in the road. Should we try to run him over? You know, but the goal is eradication. So everyone we kill is actually helping the native fauna and flora. And that's a weird, I'm not used to thinking like that. Up in New England, we don't really have stuff. Yeah, I guess maybe in the fisheries, but we don't really have any like thing.
There's plants.
Yeah, things that you just want to wholesale kill. But it does seem like that is ultimately the goal. And if so, you know, and that's the other thing is you might be like, oh, I just want to go for the big ones. And it's like, you know, you might want to trophy hunt the iguanas. And it's like, well, if you really care about it, you should take every one you can get your snare.
Do you know other people up here that are taking iguanas?
Oh, yeah, there's a whole thing on Facebook.
It's happening there.
Yeah, it's like a iguana. But they're not about... The thing that bothers me about the group here is like Iguana Assassin League or something. I can't remember what it's called. But it's very clear they're not in it to eat them.
Yeah,
so they don't eat them.
And
right.
I can't respect that.
Yeah, that's a good point. There was a guy I remember we watched, and God bless him. I'm not saying this. Well, I guess I am sort of. So, there was the guy who had a news piece, and he wrote a cookbook for iguana. I watched this media piece on him. So he had put out a cookbook because he was heading up, or I don't know if a town had hired him or whatever. I remember seeing him going around in a golf cart shooting them with an air gun. So that was like his job. He was the guy who was taking out iguanas. Puts out this cookbook, and then the news program wants him to cook iguana, and it turns out he's never actually eaten one. He put out a cookbook about it. A cookbook on iguana, he never eaten one.
Should we drop this guy's name?
And then when he cooked them, the way he did it, you were like, he just boiled the meat, and they like ate it kind of plain. I was like,
not a good way to turn somebody into
not
iguana
really.
meat.
So yeah, it would be nice to see more people eating them. I mean, I just think you're right. It's a really fantastic resource, and it's a great food. And I feel like if I lived down here, I would probably start like a...
Your skin's going to turn green.
Yeah. I would though. Like, I just like, I don't know if I can get a tour going or something, bring people down here. I don't know, but I just feel like it's this amazing thing. So figuring out how to navigate all of the private property is the main issue. But once you got a spot that you can go, I mean, there are a lot of spots down here where I'm finding now where I can do it. So anyway, what are we
We're talking about what we're cooking tonight?
Yeah, so tell us about the recipes.
So we do some grilled iguana because, you know, I've always wanted to have barbecued iguana.
Yeah,
there's been like a song in my head about it forever. So that's a goal. So we parboil that to start with. I'll figure out some spices to throw on it, and we'll cook it over some open coals. That's gonna be the most traditional possible way to eat iguana, I think, in my head. Mm-hmm. You know, it's just the most natural, and you know, if you were in the woods.
Yep.
And, you know, like I've always said, like, if I went on like Naked and Afraid, I could turn that into like Fat Naked and Afraid. I gained so much weight. But yeah, so we'll do the barbecue kind of just, this is how it is, worst case scenario.
Yeah, right.
And then we're also going to do, I'm going to make a chicken of the tree tortilla soup.
Yeah.
See how that turns out.
That's going to be nice.
Yeah.
And then you made some tortillas as well, so.
Yeah, I made some tortillas earlier.
Yeah, fantastic.
Did we talk yet about how you brined some last night and have them in the smoker?
Yeah, we brined some last night, smoked them this morning, so just used salt and sugar. Just making a brine. You have to watch Daniel's video on that.
Yeah, and I'll sort of conclude it by saying that, or this piece about iguanas, that what we do is skin them. Gut them, skin them. You know, I guess the whole process is like, I take the whole iguana, cut feet off, cut hands off, cut the head off, cut the end of the tail off to the section where there's not really any meat that I'm going to use.
It's like an asparagus where you just snap it.
Yeah, exactly. Find the meristematic growth, cut that off, gut him, skin him, which I use, as you've seen, I use those catfish skinning pliers just to get a grip on it. Get that hide off. I'm starting to get a lot better at it. I got real yesterday. I ripped through those ones. I'm getting, once I get a few going, I did that one assembly line style. I take all those bodies and I'll freeze them, put them in my soft-sided cooler, and use that as carry-on luggage, and I'll bring them home. And then when we get home, I'll brine and smoke and do the process there too. So, but those soft, I don't want to say the brand here, the soft-sided coolers.
Yeah. Do they ever ask you in the airport what the fuck is in your bag?
Oh, man. I get a lot of it. What's neat is you walk onto the plane carrying one of those Yetis, and I know. That was on purpose. See how I did that? I built a little suspense for it. So I walk onto the plane and you see, especially if the plane's pretty much all seated.
All the heads come into the aisle.
You see who hunts, or fishes, because they all look in a way that nobody else looks. Yep. And then they all are like, hey, what you got in there? What you got in there? What you got in there? And when you tell them iguana, man, people just can't get their head around it. And most people are pretty cool and supportive of it. We've run into a few people who don't like seal. It. But, yeah, exactly. It's mostly seal and mammoth. But that technique of bringing frozen meat in your carry-on luggage like that, I think probably I'm bringing a 40-liter. Last time I came and visited you, I brought the 20-liter, and you were offering me more stuff than I could bring, and I was like, oh, I wish I brought the 40. Yep. This time I have the 40. It's a little cumbersome. I think the 30 is probably the sweet spot, for carry-on, but the 40 will fit up overhead too, or that thing now where you bring an oversized bag on purpose and then they just check it at the gate and you don't have to pay the baggage fee. Right. That thing. Yeah. Like everybody doesn't do that.
We'll courtesy check that for you.
Yeah, really? Exactly. Great. But anyway, that's how I'm getting them home. And then I'll do the same thing. Brine them, smoke them, pick that meat, freeze it, vacuum seal and freeze it. And then I'll have it for the Christmas party that I do every year. And it'll be tacos again. And last year, it was just interesting because I put out this, I think I had two big, like salad bowls, big bowls of meat. It fluffs up a lot when I put it in the blender. And my brother, I remember him saying, like, this is just too much, man. You're never going to get this eaten. And it all got eaten. And I served squirrel, too. So it was like people were wolfing it down. So I'm excited.
It really tastes very clean.
That's the thing about it.
What trips me out is because when you clean these things, you smell them, you're like,
they don't smell good.
I don't want to put this in my mouth. Even parboiling them.
Yeah.
Puts off an odor that's like not. It's not going. Smell. Hey, I can't wait to eat dinner.
Yeah, exactly.
But it comes out. I don't know why or when exactly that goes away. But like it's when you have the stuff smoked, it tastes like really clean, lean chicken.
Yep. You wouldn't think reptile when you taste it. I mean, it just. Man, it's just good.
It's weird because it's not what you think it is. Mm-hmm. And I never say something tastes like chicken, and
it's hard because this is the one time where it's like
it actually tastes like
taste like chicken.
It really does.
I know. It's funny. That. All week we've been dealing with it. People are like, "Well, what do they taste like?" And I just go, "Well, we had it happen here yesterday. You came off the charter with those folks, and the guy goes, "What's it taste like?" And I said, Go ahead. You know what it tastes like." And he's like, "Chicken?" I was like, "Yes, it is." Oh, Grant, I guess before we go, I just want to see sort of what your impressions of the week, being down here in general, and then also, the iguana hunting and everything.
The iguana hunting has been the exciting part, and the coconuts too, which is not something we talked about. Yeah. Finally getting to eat a sprouted coconut.
Yeah, that was really cool.
But the abundance of food down here, and living like animal food, all those iguanas just like ready for the taking.
Yep.
And the fact that it's an invasive species, it's been super cool.
Yeah, good time, right?
Yeah.
Jim, let's talk about your charter before we go. I want to.
Oh, cool.
I feel like you've put me on a lot of fish, so I'll say that first. When we've gone offshore for mahi and tuna, that's been. That's just my. I look forward to it all year.
We've had a few trips, and I know we had that one when it was just like blowing like sideways, and I felt just bad for you because you were down here, you couldn't get out. No other captains were going. I'm like.
But then you took me reef fishing.
Let's go to the bridge. We went to the bridge because it's like protected, but it's like this whole sea is just raging around us, and it's of course it's raging where the good fishing is, but it's like I can just see it in your eyes. You're like, I need to catch a fish. It's got to happen. I don't care what it is. I just need a fish.
Yeah.
So we went and caught a few. I think we caught like 10 different species of
I was
fish.
going to say, we caught like 100 fish. So just so, you know, for people, I think people listening to this are interested in food more than sports.
Sure.
So maybe going to the reef and fishing up, you know, reef fish isn't high on somebody who's a sport fisherman's list. But when you're going for food and quality, quality food, I mean, I'll eat snapper all day long.
Yeah.
So, yeah, we filled the box that day. And then the last time I was down here, we went offshore, and man, we had a good day.
We did, and you know, it's fishing, so it's not always going to be like that. I mean, you got a 54-inch dolphin. It was super nice.
You got that dolphin, I'd say, but
well,
I ate a lot of that dolphin.
we also got a bunch of tuna.
Yeah,
so it was a good combo.
I just finished up that tuna at home, and man, I was sad to see it go.
Yeah, and then the trip I had to the Tortugas was just phenomenal. I mean, if you're looking to fill a cooler, not, you know, I'm looking at putting together a trip to the Tortugas. It might be an overnighter just because you've got to drive to Key West, which is 40 miles. Then you have to launch a boat, and then you have to drive to the Tortugas, another 70 miles on the water. And then you got to check in at the Tortugas, and then you've got to go fishing, and then you got to drive 70 miles back. So it's a lot of running, but the fishing's phenomenal. So if you're looking to fill an ice box, that's the trip.
Yeah.
But you know, out here on the reef, we can catch snapper, grouper, sometimes grouper. I mean, I'd literally catch maybe 4 or 5 grouper a year.
Yeah.
Here.
More of a snapper fishery.
It's more of a snapper fishery. Just the groupers are very targeted. There's a lot of people diving for them, so they're wise and they know what's going on.
Yeah.
But yeah, so it was a good trip. But yeah, you know, I'm always happy to take someone out.
What's the name of the boat, and how do people get a hold of you?
Yeah, so it's a Real Identity is the name of the business.
Yesterday, Grant says to me, "What's the name of Jim's boat?" I go, "Oh, Real Identity." He goes, "Ooh."
Well, that's the business. The boat's name is Real Lucky.
Okay.
So as I build on and add more boats, I'll stick with the real whatever.
Yeah, got it.
Theme there on the play on words there. And look me up on Facebook under Real Identity Charters.
Cool, and we'll put the links to that in the show notes as well. Well, thank you for hosting us, and I just want to say you've for me personally, you've been one of the key people who've accelerated my learning curve.
Glad to pass it on.
Yeah, you've done a lot. Fish, you got me really interested in alligator. Showed me around a stingray recently. got me onto the iguanas.
That was a little intense here at the dock. I was not quite ready for that. But, opportunity was there.
I'm quite happy to now know that they're fantastic food. Anyway, you've done a lot to accelerate my journey, both with the hunting, fishing component, but also the cooking component too. So I just want to say thanks, and thanks for being so generous out here. And
it's great to meet you, Jim.
Good to meet you too, Grant. And Daniel, you know, you're always welcome here. I think one of the best things you could do if you have a nice thing is to share it with others.
Yeah.
So both of you guys are always welcome anytime you want.
That's a beautiful way to conclude it. Hey, thanks so much, Jim.
All right, thank you guys.
Thanks for listening to the WildFed podcast. You can help us grow this show by subscribing and leaving us a rating and review. It ensures better rankings and more advertiser interest, which translates directly into better shows, more awesome guests, and a constant stream of fresh, new content. Have a question you'd like answered on the show, or a hunting, fishing, or foraging trip you'd like to host us on? Email us at info@wild-fed.com. And be sure to visit our website, wild-fed.com, to check out the WildFed video show and store. WildFed. Food is all around you.